The year is 2022 and movies are back. Theater attendance was way up and so too was its excellence. There's a lot of movies vying for your attention as we head into award season. So let's recap our favorites. These are our picks for the 10 best films of 2022. Kicking things off at number 10, 2022 was a pretty mixed year for comedies, with many of its funniest films belonging more to other genres. But some highlights included the lovable coming of adulthood in Cha-Cha Real Smooth, the absurd biofiction of Weird, the Weird Al Yankovic Story, and the intimate odd coupling in Good Luck to You, Leo Grant. Clerks 3 was a good entry into an excellent series. Bros was much funnier than its biggest detractors would have you think, and we weren't sure whether to include Jackass Forever here or in the documentary category, as a meditation on the inevitability of time's inexorable march onwards and the many ways we seek to deny it. However, for our first pick this year, there wasn't a film with which we had a better time and which had a more transformative performance than Nicolas Cage playing both Nicolas Cage and Nicolas Cage in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Daddy doesn't need a struggling artist for a father. She needs you to be a star. Now you get the next one, baby, and we're back. Not that we went anywhere. Not that we went anywhere. Come here. Yeah, Nick Cage smooch is good. You tell him! Nick Cage, smooch is good!
Hysterical and bombastic, the film's comedy is built almost entirely on the premise that Nick Cage could infiltrate an entire arms operation and completely avoid suspicion in increasingly improbable ways on account of how utterly Nick Cage he is. But honestly, the conceit works, in no small part because Nick Cage is utterly superlative at being so much more Nick Cage than anyone else. Pedro Pascal proves yet again that there are no limits to his charisma as an irresistibly likable member of the CIA's most wanted list who, gosh darn it, has just got such a winning smile and easy chemistry with everyone's favorite Nick Cage that you can't help but love him. The film channels 90s golden era action self-reference, one of the year's most delightful romances, and an appropriate reverence for Paddington 2 into a surprisingly wholesome and hilarious gem. On the horror front, things were weird, in all the best ways this year. We enjoyed Fresh, Barbarian, We're All Going to the World's Fair, and The Watcher. Ty West hit us hard twice with both X and its origin story Pearl, while Nope saw Jordan Peele return for a horror comedy western with amazing creature design and a monkey subplot we want to see a whole movie about. But for our top pick of the year, it was David Cronenberg's return we enjoyed most, with his sickeningly sexy Crimes of the Future.
What's this? Cut yourself shaving?
I seem to be a contestant in the inner beauty pageant.
The things you drag home.
I'm entering in the category of best original organ with no known function. This is like a rainbow for internal organ flashers.
Crimes of the Future is not a comfortable film. Crimes of the Future will not tuck you into bed feeling nice and cozy. Crimes of the Future is not, under any circumstances, to be watched alongside your parents or small children. In David Cronenberg's newest vision of our collective f***ed up future, human evolution has spiraled out of control, and new instruments of bureaucracy, including a wonderfully weird Kristen Stewart, have sprung up to police the unregulated creation of dissident neo-organs. And despite the near constant exposition dumps and body envelope violations, the whole thing is pretty impossible to look away from. Surgery is the new sex, biopsy the new art, food the new politics, furniture are the new pets. Shit is, in short, very strange. But if you can stomach the innards, the juice is more than worth a squeeze. With ever so slightly less self-mutilation, we had a blast with this year's thrillers. The Menu and Triangle of Sadness both followed class inversions to some delightfully dark places, while Emily the Criminal builds significant tension clawing out from beneath the system. It was a fantastic year for satisfying whodunits, the hilariously vicious Bodies, 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 the charmingly mannered See How They Run, and the unstoppably fun Glass Onion. However, our favorite whodunit this year comes from Park Chan-wook with his latest Decision to Leave.
저녁은 또 아이스크림. 식후 후배는 안 됩니다. 아휴.
The investigation of a cool-headed detective and his headstrong partner into an apparent suicide develops into an unusual relationship as mystery recedes into the background and romance moves into the fore. Novelistic in length and structure as it winds across 3 different investigations with only the slightest of relations, Decision to Leave weaves shifting motives in with shifting narrative focus in a way that reminded us of the director's previous The Handmaid. With breathtaking visuals, great chemistry even in the strangest of situations, and a kind of razor-sharp precision in storytelling Park has become known for. The tension that emerges in the tale he unravels is not really in the mystery, but in what feelings develop in the face of it, as is the case in all the best erotic thrillers. There were some gorgeous animated films this year, from the saccharine sweet hybrid stop-motion wholesomeness of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, to the picture book magic of The Girl from the Other Side, to the tried and true 3D Pixar glory of Turning Red. There are great times to be had with the madcap animated Key and Peele hilarity of Wendell and Wild, the big screen wackiness of the Bob's Burgers movie, and the DreamWorks furry heist of The Bad Guys. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio took over 1,000 days to shoot, and it is the most stunning piece of stop-motion animation we've ever seen. However, for our favorite this year, we've saved this slot for Richard Linklater's return to rotoscoping and the little discussed Apollo 10.5, A Space-Age Childhood.
We've scouted you on the kickball field, we've spoken with your teachers, we were impressed with a few of your science reports, and we like that you've earned a Presidential Physical Fitness Award 3 years running. In short, we've selected you as the perfect candidate for this mission.
Okay, pause. let's forget about all this for now. First, let me tell you about life back then. It was a great time and place to be a kid.
In theory, Apollo 10.5 sets out to tell the story of a secret moon mission captained by a young Linklater insert after NASA goofs up and builds its latest lander just a little too small. But in practice, that plot is just a Trojan horse that allows the director to spend an hour and a half recounting a series of slice-of-life anecdotes about being a kid in Houston in the summer of '69, narrated simply and with zero goofballery by Jack Black of all people. The film is by far at its least interesting when it's moving its story along, and infinitely more engaging when it's slowly meandering through a childhood of accumulated nostalgia for TV shows and playground games and personal strategies for undermining one's elders, which is great because the film hardly spends more than 10 minutes of runtime on its actual plot. It is a very long, shaggy dog story, and better for it, because nobody wastes time quite like Linklater. But in quieter ways, it's also a story about what was once enough for a family, for a country, and for a father. Back then, there were few enough TV channels that everyone made shared memories of even the worst movies, and Linklater's father was proud to have even worked in NASA's shipping department. And today, Linklater has made an excellent little animated feature that will likely languish in obscurity amidst Netflix's back catalog, in which he remembers fantasizing about how it must have felt to be an actual astronaut. Documentary continued to be one of the formats with the most exciting growth in 2022, with streamers increasingly investing in powerful real-world narratives. Stories were told about Russian opposition members and David Bowie and punk frontwomen, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, and a couple of crazy volcanologists. But there weren't just stories about people. Some of the best documentaries this year made main characters out of everything from Mars rovers to dairy cows. All That Breathes found something special at the unusual cross-section of brotherhood, human nature, the health of our planet, and a population of black kites, standing out just behind our favorite doc of the year, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed.
It was a packed Saturday night.
No, where is everyone?
We had a signal thread, but it was really like, though at this time, if you see prescriptions falling, it's starting.
Are we ready? Yeah.
Nan Goldin was a revolutionary photographer who, starting in the early 70s, turned her lens with empathy towards a previously ignored underground amidst their own messiness. The bohemians, the addicts, the queers, and even herself. She was a queer outsider with a drug habit, and she watched through the 80s as the AIDS epidemic decimated her tribe. She was a young girl from the suburbs with a history of family tragedy from which she barely escaped, and she's an activist at the forefront of the fight against the Sackler family, the pharmaceutical empire responsible for profiting off of hundreds of thousands of deaths to prescription painkillers. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed bears witness to her in these, her many facets and more, weaving together the disparate threads into a portrait of righteous fury and fearless honesty, bringing together the personal and the universal with all the nuance, sophistication, and scope that a life spent boldly astride both art and politics deserves. Fantasy is such a demanding genre to pull off that a year with one quality entry would be a real coup. 2022 had multiple. In animation, we already mentioned Del Toro's Pinocchio, but there was also the haunting and contained stop-motion world of The House. George Miller's unexpected 3,000 Years of Longing was an entrancing storybook fable that evoked the most intoxicating of worlds. But this year, we don't think there was anything that punched us in the gut quite like the mud-streaked descent into a witchy Viking hellfire from Robert Eggers' The Northman.
It is not enough to be the man that never cries, prince, and listens. The prince that turned from his fate. A beast that cares for naught. A beast that brings tears from the eyes of man.
Sewn out of the same mythological whole cloth from which Shakespeare once fashioned Hamlet, The Northman sees Robert Eggers turn his obsession with the trappings of history onto 9th century Scandinavia with the legend of Amleth, a prince returned to seek unholy vengeance for his father's murder in an inhospitable Iceland. And, once again, Eggers blurs the line between fantasy, legend, and reality. Is his magic supernatural, or merely a good story? Is it the product of a dogma, exaggeration, psychedelics, self-fulfilling prophecy, delusion, and his own unreliable cinema? Or is there something truly mystical beneath the rituals and bloodshed? He takes magic seriously, if not fantastically, in a way that makes it feel like as much a part of history as battles and kings. Less of an action epic than its trailer would have you believe, it is nevertheless not a very human story. Its main characters are elemental and animal, and more instruments of the fates than of their own devices. They seem to speak in pure prophecy, even if its hero, played to perfection by Alexander Skarsgård, is more of a hulking human trapezius muscle than his own man, unleashing a primal force and fury onto every frame he inhabits. It has a rhythm of the drumbeat of history, a serpentine sense of the occult, and a guttural energy that will leave you gripped from start to finish. Next up, for our number 4 slot, as is tradition, we're honoring all the sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas of the year. It was a good year for sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas. There was an above-average number of sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas, and what sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas there were excellent. We're actually going to skip over the honorable mentions for all of the sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas that didn't quite make the cut this year. Not because there weren't any, because there definitely were, but simply in the interest of time, we definitely don't want to waste precious runtime mentioning all the sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family dramas that weren't the best. So we'll just get straight to our favorites. We think this year's best sci-fi, kung fu, action comedy, existential family drama was, wait for it, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
What's happening? I'm talking to my ex-husband. Like I said to you before. It's you messing with my head. Don't she? Don't worry, I'm like,
please.
In an era of multiverses, no interdimensional time-space construct was as much a manic head trip as the latest entry from the directing duo The Daniels. A mother-daughter relationship tested by differing values and a lifetime of regret is fractured into a kaleidoscope of conflict across every single alternate reality, and the fate of the entire universe hangs in the balance of their learning to get along. The Daniels reign in unbelievable ambition on a relatively paltry budget, showcasing an astonishing hyper-maximalism where the founding aesthetic principles seem to simply be the word more. There isn't a piece of heartfelt sentiment they can't rip the rug out from under with a raunchy punchline, or a juvenile scenario they can't transmute back into deep existential meaning. Pair that with a career best performance from Michelle Yeoh, a career ridiculousest performance from Jamie Lee Curtis, and improvised weapon choreography evocative of a horny high school-aged Jackie Chan stunt team, and you have a movie insane enough to keep everyone talking the entire year long. 2022 was an amazing year for the action epic. The atrophied box office has been stretched to bursting by the must-see event films that have roared across the silver screen all year. Marvel gave us a newer, sillier Thor and the Multiverse of Madness, while DC brought Batman back in a big way. Free Guy was the remake of the Lego movie we didn't know we all needed. Bullet Train was the prequel to Snowpiercer we knew would be so much sillier, and Ambulance was a return to the Bayhem of the early aughts that made us feel like the last 10 years had never happened. And you know what? That was kinda nice. Avatar 2 was literally a decade and a half in the making, and who cares how good the story was? You get to spend 3 hours living in the waterworld James Cameron always dreamed of, kicking it with alien whales. But this year, there's only one action epic that could possibly take this cake. The film that practically redefined action epics for the modern era. The biggest, baddest, most balls-to-the-wall, slightly homoerotic, motorcycle-riding, mustachioed, long-anticipated team-up in the face of past tragedy, working together to take down a foreign threat by proving two heads are better than one, even when you're outnumbered and outgunned, screaming airborne into the danger zone. We are talking, of course, about this year's RRR. Okay, looking back, we see how that could have been a little misleading, and don't get us wrong, Top Gun Maverick was fantastic. Those aerial dogfighting sequences were the best ever shot, and Tollywood's RRR was almost impossibly overhyped. Everyone who saw it before us reported back near transcendent experiences. Just go see it, they'd say. It might be the best action movie ever made, or it's literally perfect. Our expectations were launched so sky high, we couldn't have been anything but let down, and then we saw it. There are mustaches and motorcycles and bromance aplenty between two legendary village fighters teaming up on Shoulder Top in this kinda sorta vaguely based on a true story mythologization of Indian revolutionaries on dovetailing missions to find a kidnapped girl and provide a generation of freedom fighters with the arms they desperately seek to take up. And it does everything at an 11. Tragedy, comedy, villainy, heroism, sacrifice, spectacle, danger, song, dance. It goes literally all out all the time without a shred of protective irony or self-consciousness about it. It is truly a diamond in the rough and the most fun we've had at the movies in ages. Just go see it. It might be the best action movie ever made. It's literally perfect. Closing in at number 2, it's time to talk Oscar bait. The year's best prestige dramas. From the gorgeous cinematography and pitch-black comedy of McDonough's Banshees of Inisherin, to the bleak and brutal depiction of war in All Quiet on the Western Front, to the Renaissance in full blossom in The Whale. Bardo went surreal, Babylon went wild, everyone made movies about going to the movies. We actually had some real difficulties with The Fabelmans, but the whole rest of the world seems to absolutely love it, so we're not sure how to recommend it one way or the other. But the film we do feel very confident recommending, and that the whole rest of the world seems to agree on, is our next pick, Tar.
What's your name?
Olive Carr?
All right, Olive. What do you make of what we've just been listening to?
It's pretty awesome. I mean, there's incredible atonal tension.
I agree about the tension part. Now, you can intellectually contemplate or masturbate about the felicity of the so-called atonal, but the important question here is, what are you conducting? What is the effect? What is it actually doing to me?
Tar begins with 20 minutes of on-stage interview between composer Lydia Tarr and a journalist from The New Yorker that is fascinatingly insightful and groan-inducingly pompous in equal measure. And while it is immediately clear that something very complicated is going on beneath quite a few layers of pretense, it is a long while before the last one is finally pulled back to reveal the full extent of the complex, unspoken power structure that Tarr has leveraged herself to the top of. The conversation about Tar must begin with Cate Blanchett's unexaggeratedly genius performance, but it definitely doesn't end there. She disappears so thoroughly into her role, a woman with twisting complications and a cutting intelligence that she isn't afraid to deploy early and often, surrounded by a supporting cast all operating at similar levels and a directorial hand that's just as subtle and deft. The film's slow, almost hypnotic tumble into the unexpected is rightly lauded as one of the year's best. Finally, closing us out in our top spot, our favorite film this year belongs to the indie drama category, because we know exactly who we are. We loved how Luca Guadagnino pulled gentle emotional vulnerability from his second consecutive Cannibal in Bones and All, how Owen Klein found the darkest humor in indie comics in Funny Pages, and how Claire Denis extracted immense eroticism from middle-aged bodies in the midst of the pandemic. Hit the Road is a bittersweet road film with a powerful destination. Joyland is an exploration of sexuality and repression in Pakistan's modern age, and After Yang is exactly the kind of soft sci-fi we loved from her. However, for our top pick of the year, there's nothing that left us so moved or so devastated as Charlotte Wells' After Sun.
I just turned 11, and you are 130, turning 131 in 2 days.
So, when you were 11, what did you think you would be doing now?
After Sun, a tender, dreamy memoir of a young girl's vacation in Turkey with her young single father, is completely unremarkable in its plot summary and anything but on the screen. Shimmering with a lingering love and tragic nostalgia, After Sun looks back on a childhood that is forever out of reach except through the lens of memory and a handicap. Charlotte Wells directs with an understated touch and a quiet confidence beneath every little choice she makes. Each shot is so perfectly framed and timed, each performance so perfectly naturalistic that one would be forgiven for mistaking her for a seasoned veteran at the apex of her career, recounting a true story in explicit detail. But none of that would be true. After Sun is a debut feature, and while it's based on real events, it's also a brilliant work of fiction. The beginning is as haunting as a ghost story, the present sitting as a specter over the past, and the ending is as shattered into pieces as it will soon leave you, knowing the exact perfect instant to make its heartbreaking Irish goodbye. And we cannot wait to see what Charlotte Wells has in store for us next, because After Sun is absolutely our favorite film of 2022. So, what do you think? Disagree with any of our picks? Do we leave out any of your favorite movies this year? Was it another sci-fi kung fu action comedy existential family drama? Let us know in the comments below and be